very pleased to be able to introduce this next segment of today's agenda, the evolution of the creative technologist. And I think it's no secret to us that the role of the creative technologist has come a long way, even though we've only been doing this for 4 years here. I think it's fair to say that at the intersection of software development and creative interpretation, creative technologists have been the architects and the bricklayers for some amazing interactive work, some of which we just saw here a minute ago. But I think the stakes for digital continue to evolve. They're certainly evolving for us at SapientNitro. And interactive systems are now in the face of, sales missions, customer support, service missions, lots of things that aren't sexy, but are very, very important nonetheless at the enterprise level. I don't think that people distinguish between what we oftentimes on the agency side of the world think about is upper funnel, mid funnel, lower funnel, awareness, consideration, purchase. People don't think that way, they don't distinguish. So brands have to provide a seamless experience across those interaction states. And I think against this backdrop, the systems to serve all those interactions have to be simple, they have to be beautiful, compelling, they have to be scalable, and these are the things that creative technologists small and many folks at our place spend lots of time thinking about how to make all those things happen simultaneously. So I think it's fair to say that as things grow ever more complex in terms of the marketing stack, it's no question that creative technologists are needed now more than ever. But according to our next speaker, which I'm about to introduce, those skills need to evolve. So I'm here to provide you a bit of a provocative point of view in his own terms from somebody who is my great pleasure to introduce as our next speaker. Sheldon Monteiro is Global Chief Technology Officer of SapientNitro. For almost 20 years, he has helped take Sapient from what was once a pure-play technology consultancy and systems integrator to becoming one of the world's leading agencies at the intersection of technology and brand storytelling. I'll go on to say that he is responsible for essentially all the technical talent, innovation, culture, processes, and systems that are responsible for delivering our global scale at SapientNitro. He's also the executive sponsor and co-lead of our unique Chief Marketing Technology Officer University, some of which you heard about last year in Brooklyn when we met. And I'm sure he'll talk slightly about that today. It's a professional development program we've designed to develop senior leaders to innovate at the intersection of story and technology, while also taming scale and complexity in systems, organization, and culture. I can honestly say when I joined SapientNitro 3 years ago as Chief Creative Officer of New York, every time I attended a meeting, a JAD session, an analyst presentation, or pitch with him, I learned something new from Sheldon every time. Please join me in welcoming my friend and colleague, Sheldon Monteiro.
Can you hear me back there? Is it on yet?
I'm not sure.
Go. Hello? Yep. Excellent. So I'm flattered by that introduction, and he's kind of given away my full talk here. I have no animated GIFs or Welsh talking plans, so I hope you're loaded up on the coffee. So we are here to talk about, I'm here to make a case for the evolution of our profession. And I can already see, a few possible groans in the room. This is not another rehash of who are we and what is creative technology is about. Surmad and Criddle have done, amazing work at that. Over 63,000 views on SlideShare, so they've kind of defined already who you are or how you think about your profession. I'm here to talk about where we need to go next. But before I do that, I thought it might make sense to have you hear a little bit about the person making the proclamations, in addition to what Alan said. So, my journey with computers started at the age of 14. I grew up in India, and my mom brought one of these back from a trip to the United Kingdom. Pretty amazing machine, 48K of RAM, 8-bit Zilog 80 microprocessor. It used a cassette tape for storage, and it used a normal standard definition television as a monitor. I was fascinated by this device and try to learn everything I possibly could about it. I learned how to program in BASIC and assembly language. I used it for gaming. Whoops. Jet Set Willy was my favorite game. Now, in those days, I was kind of an entrepreneurial kid, but I quickly figured out you couldn't make money in software in India because at that time piracy was rampant, and pretty much anything you wrote would be copied, especially since it was so easy to copy it with cassette to cassette analog techniques. So I got into hardware. I learned how to repair these machines. I put myself through school repairing these machines. As a small business, I used to make various peripherals like joystick interfaces to connect things like floppy disk drives. And possibly, if I think back to my first creative technology assignment, it was designing a Jeopardy-like quiz management system for a college competition that was sponsored by Nestle. I was paid something like 1,500 rupees for that assignment at the time, which in those days was the equivalent of about $150. Now, I spent about 2 weeks on it, and I spent probably about $100 on the parts, so $50 for 2 weeks of work. My hourly rate hasn't changed much since then. So one of the next chapters that I want to call out was before Google. In 1995, in this very building, on the 3rd floor, I joined a fast-growing company called Sapient. I was employee number 196. And I joined as a C++ developer. Today, as Alan mentioned, I lead technology across the agency. Roughly 12,800 colleagues, about 5,500 in technology, and about 800 of those in what we call experience technology, which is our moniker for the closest to a creative technologist. We have a couple of my colleagues here from the experience technology domain in the room. So that's it. I think of myself first and foremost as a technologist and hopefully a little creative. So what are we going to talk about? I think that, before we jump into evolution, we've got to start with a basic definition of what a creative technologist is. So I'm going to recycle one of the most eloquent visualizations that I've seen. And given that we're going to talk about evolution, I thought we'd start out with this visualization, which you may have seen before. Scott Brinker, who runs the popular chiefmartech.com blog, published this in 2011. And I thought, in one picture, he's managed to capture the essence of who we are. We're basically professionals, craftspeople at the intersection of software, usability, art, and creativity. That's it, right? And if you're here at this particular session with the A's, you're probably in an agency, which means that there is a qualifier on this. We create commercial art. And we create commercial art that does cool and useful things at the intersection of technology and marketing. All right, so this is the definition that we're going with. Now, 2 years ago at Createtech, Scott Brinker was actually one of the speakers. And he commended all of us, all of you, with changing the agency world, with moving the conversation from art and copy to code and data. I agree with him. I think we've put some amazing work into the world. Some of what you've been seeing all of this morning. I only saw the last 2 presentations, but what I saw, just examples of just how much we have done. So thank you for that. Now, against this backdrop, our industry, in my view, is in crisis. A month ago, just prior to Advertising Week, this article appeared in Forbes. Avidan is one of the well-known search consultants, matchmaker between brands and agencies. And he published the findings of his 5th annual relationship survey between marketers and their agencies. And one of the headlines, the majority of clients, 62%, admit that they now view agencies as suppliers. and that today's relationships are no longer a partnership. So what's broken? I just excerpted some of the most important points from this article which appeared in Forbes. I'm not going to read through all of them, but let's pick a couple. He says, and this is when I say he says, this is what our clients are saying, CMOs are saying. Only 16% say that agencies are very good at orchestrating integrated solutions. 78% are frustrated by the way agencies manage a holistic approach to communications. And he's not just talking about brand agencies. He says some clients don't think that digital agencies have figured it out yet either. So something's pretty off here. We're putting this amazing work into the world, and this is what our clients are saying. Now, I'm not saying whether it's our client's fault or whether it's agency's fault. Let's just acknowledge that there is a real issue. Right? When customers are unhappy, there is a real issue. I don't think a big idea is going to fix this. All right? I really don't. But I'll offer you a theory as to what might. One of the things that we are doing, and this was mentioned earlier, is really moving our advisory across the whole C-suite. It's necessary in order to drive integration across our client organizations to not just be speaking to the CMO, but also be speaking to the CTO, the CIO, and the CEO, the full C-suite. In order to do this, you need a new breed of individual who can span those disciplines, who can talk in those languages, the language of marketing, the language of process, the language of technology. So we are actually growing talent that can do this. We've put together this executive MBA-like program. We call it Chief Marketing Technology Officer University. And it really takes some of our senior technologists through a rigorous program of study and personal development. Joe Morgan here is a student in the school, so you can ask him what his experience is like if you're interested. But I'm not here to talk about this today. I'm here to talk about something far more grassroots. About a year ago, I came across this article, and it's penned by George Colony, who's the CEO of Forrester Research, and Peter Burris, who sets the agenda for their CIO research. And it's kind of a seminal piece. They call it Technology Management in the Age of the Customer. And there was one statement in it that really caught my eye. Throughput and processing integrity will not be the key considerations. This is literally excerpted straight from it. The magic will center on the overall customer experience. And I read that, and I did a double take, and I had one of these moments. Right? Throughput and processing integrity will not be the key considerations. Seriously? Then, more recently, this was a few months ago, I came across this piece from Gartner, which postulates that IT is moving towards, information technology is moving to a two-speed approach. On the one side, you've got waterfall-driven development that is high ceremony. On the other side, you've got agile development that is close to the customer and business-centric. And I had another one of these moments when I saw this. Why? See, as creative technologists, I think that we would all gravitate immediately towards the right. We like to, develop stuff that real people use, stay close to the business, stay close to customers. We love to deliver agile. We love to deliver in short time frames, to prototype, if not build actual working stuff and put it into the world really fast. But I want to underline one other thing, which is they say that in mode 2, that clients will engage with those vendors if they are small, if they are new, and these are short-term deals. So they're going to have one-night stands with these vendors, right? And on the other side, you have enterprise suppliers with long-term deals who are IT-centric and removed from the customer. IT-centric and removed from the customer. I want to emphasize the last three words, removed from the customer. So who are these? Are these bureaucrats? And our clients want to marry the bureaucrats? Look, I'm not a big fan, as you can probably infer, of this mode of two-speed IT. I think it's flawed. I think that it's a fine place to start, given that it's hard to get agile, if you're a big organization that is very process-centric, I think it's pretty darn hard to get agile. And it tends to be one of those things that you drive from the bottom up versus the top down. So two-speed ID could be an interim state where you kind of allow the process-centric, you keep the auditors happy, right, on mode 1, and you have a little bit of fun in mode 2 on the right-hand side by doing things quickly. But that's it. It's a transitional state. It can't be the end goal, because if it is the end goal, then all you're doing is playing around the edges. You're kind of not changing the culture. You're not changing the way we deliver value to consumers, to customers. And that's a real problem. So, what do we do about this? I think first off, we've got to go back to first principles. And there's this really smart dude, Rucker, who made this statement. Because the purpose of a business is to create a customer, the business enterprise has two, and only two, basic functions: marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest are costs. So let's go with the implications of this statement for a minute. I think we've got to move from this mode of art and copy, moving to code and data, and say that that's not enough. So what is enough? If we produce commercial art at the intersection of technology and marketing, it's probably not enough. We've got to strike out marketing as the exclusive domain, and we've got to expand our remit to the entire business. The entire business. That's our canvas. It includes marketing, it includes innovation, it includes all of the processes and systems that our clients have. So we've got to expand our zone of impact. So how do we do this? I'll offer up 4 thoughts for your consideration. Number 1, story systems. Number 2, integration. Number 3, Devops. And number 4, decoupling. Let's go through these one by one. Story systems. So I don't think this will be terribly revolutionary, but if you tell people stories, they might listen. If you have them experience it, they're more likely to believe. I think we'd all subscribe to that thought or postulate. So we've got to move from telling our brand stories to having people experience our brand stories on their terms. What that means is that we've actually got to create worlds, not individual executions, but complete worlds that customers can choose to engage with on their own terms. We call those worlds a storyscape. And simply stated, a storyscape is a landscape of emotional and transactional experiences where each connection inspires engagement with another. So the brand becomes part of the consumer story. Now, as a technologist, that's all fine and dandy. What does that really mean? Right. One piece would be very, very familiar to each one of you, which is innovative consumer activation. That's what we're about. That's what we've been hearing about all morning. And that's the world that we live in. The other piece is trusted technology at massive scale. We've got to do both, and we've got to do both extremely well. So, in this bigger illustration of a story system, just want to call out a couple of things. One is, any given story system probably involves dozens of places where we will interact with the customer. Dozens of touch points. It might be a website, it might be an in-store experience, it might be a billboard, an out-of-home thing, and it might be something that you see, off of a web search, and many, many more. Right? That's part of the innovative consumer activation. All of these are connected by what we call an organizing idea, which, you could argue has some things in common with a big idea, but an organizing idea is more participative and active and allows us to actually connect these experiences with a story. But the thing I want you to focus on is that all of these experiences are connected by technology and data. And that has huge implications. Because if that technology and data happens to be in mode 1, we have a problem. So we've got to answer this question. Where do software architectures come from? Because the reality is that story systems will involve multiple types of architectures. And there's this other really smart dude, Philippe Cruchen, who asked and answered this question. And he said that story systems, that software architectures come from 3 sources. 1, we steal stuff, all right? We steal stuff that has been done before. 2, we use a structured methodology to get from point A to point B, a set of steps that if you follow, you'll be safe. And the third is we use intuition. All right, fair enough. We steal, we use methods, and we use intuition. Now, if you vary the ratio of these 3 sources of inspiration, classical systems use a lot of theft, a fair amount of method, and we actually try to reduce intuition. We try to reduce intuition because it results in more risk, right? So that's a classical system. And on the unprecedented system, which is probably the world that many of us live in, we have a limited amount of theft. We still do. We leverage the work of others. We use method, and we increase the amount of intuition. Now, here's the important thing. In a story system, we've got to value both sides of this equally. So we've got to value that the ERP system, or the fulfillment system, or the warehouse management system are all part of that story system, part of the consumer's storyscape. And they are impacting the customer experience. When we are talking integration, this stuff really matters. We've got to value that as much as we value the unprecedented systems that we go ooh and ah and get really excited about. That's one major implication. Second implication, a lot of us, I imagine, spend more time on one side of development than the other. Maybe you spend your time more on the front end than on the back end. But I'd argue that we've got to value both the front end and the back end, both the back end and the front end in story systems. We've got to care about them, all right? So that's it on story systems. They underlie everything that I'm going to be talking about in the next 3 sections. Let's talk about integration. To deliver any story system of reasonable size, it sometimes takes hundreds of people. When I say deliver, I don't just mean build it, I mean operate it. Think about the number of people that are involved in delivering customer experience, from designing user experience to building stuff to putting it into production to managing the operations processes, customer service processes. There are a lot of people involved in that. And there's a lot of complexity that comes with that. A lot of people who have come from different educational backgrounds, perhaps different disciplines, not just within our own agencies, but also within the client organizations that we work with, right? Now, I don't believe that these different cultures are at war with each other. I just don't believe that we have a whole lot of common language. And it feels a little bit like this, right? In the book of Genesis in the Old Testament, they talk about people who were trying to build a tower to the heavens. And God saw what they were trying to do and came down and confounded their language, so that they now all spoke different languages. And because they now couldn't communicate with each other, they stopped building the tower. And this town came to be known as Babel, the Tower of Babel. In many ways, what's happening within us and our clients and that relationship feels a little bit like the Tower of Babel. So what have we done? One thing is we've adopted a formal way of actually ensuring that stuff does not fall through the cracks. Any system, any storyscape has a number of stakeholders. There are stakeholders in marketing, there are stakeholders in customer service, there are stakeholders in IT, there are stakeholders in the business. They all have concerns of their own. There's even the chief security officer, right? All of these people have concerns of their own, and you got to make sure that those concerns are actually covered. You address them when you're designing a story system. So simply, we say that stakeholders have concerns, and those concerns are addressed by viewpoints, and certain types of viewpoints are called perspectives, which are cross-cutting viewpoints. This is not intended to inject a dose of formality or documentation beyond what is necessary, but it's simply intended to ensure that stuff doesn't fall through the cracks, and we've got a comprehensive way to describe our story systems. We address the needs of all stakeholders. Now, all this is fine and dandy, but as I'm sure you would agree, all the stakeholder concerns are important, but if we get the user experience wrong, it doesn't matter, right? We've got to get user experience right. So that's a good thing, because most of our clients are pretty focused on this as well. In a recent Bain & Company study, 95% of firms say that they are customer-focused, and 80% say that they deliver superior experience. This is 362 firms that were interviewed by Bain. Sounds good on the surface. The problem is this. That's a huge disconnect. My takeaway from this is customers don't care if one of your executions is particularly clever. What they care is that your story system has integrity, that you're delivering on the brand proposition in every customer touch. That's the source of the disconnect. It isn't that we aren't focused on producing amazing work and putting it into the world. It's a fact that it all doesn't hang together. Let's talk DevOps for a minute. So don't let this happen to your storyscape. Let's acknowledge what's happened with DevOps and continuous delivery in the last few years. It's become this really hot topic, right? But I don't think that, we woke up one morning and said, hey, let's continuously deliver software. Well, maybe you did, but I didn't. I don't think most CIOs came in with that mindset. The reality is that, DevOps and continuous delivery have become an engineering imperative because of customers and competition. There is a need to put software into production faster, quickly, and safely. Quick and safe. And to do that in a continuous process versus a discrete process. That's what's really driven the need for DevOps and continuous delivery. So what is DevOps? The working definition that I use is it's simply a matter of setting common goals and objectives among different groups within the organization, including but not limited to development and operations. So common goals, evaluating success or failure with a common scale, and improving processes, improving the tooling, improving the workflow, improving the communications on a continuous and ongoing basis. Right? That's what this is all about, to integrate the organization. Now, importantly, it's not sufficient to have one section of the story system, one of the applications doing continuous delivery, or even 5 applications. The whole storyscape has got to be agile and being delivered with DevOps techniques and being delivered, in a continuous manner. Because the story system is as agile as its slowest dependency. I can't state this with enough emphasis. And this is the reason why when I go back to mode 1 and mode 2, I have a real problem with that. Because if we allow mode 1 to continue, if we allow our clients to believe that there are going to be sections of the enterprise which are waterfall and are only going to deliver in an episodic manner, our customer experiences, the end experiences that we deliver to customers, will always be gated by what's possible by the slowest portion of the enterprise systems. We've got to force DevOps across the story system. Last point, decoupling. So I don't have much to say here because it's been said very well. So Stevie, this developer at Google, right, a couple of years ago, he put out this rant on Google Plus, and one piece in that was about his life at Amazon, where Jeff put out an edict, if you will. And he said, 5 points. At Amazon, all teams will expose their data. Fair enough. Teams must communicate solely through interfaces. No other form of crosstalk is allowed. You will talk only through interfaces. And these interfaces, without exception, should be externalizable, which means that they should be capable of being exposed to the outside world. And then he put some teeth behind it. If you don't do this, you won't have a job at Amazon. That was pretty darn powerful, for not just because of what it said, but because of who said it. It's the reason why Amazon and Google and Facebook and even companies like Etsy are internet businesses, because they can continuously deliver software, and they can do so in an agile manner because all of these different parts and pieces are agile. They empower smaller groups of teams to own their viewpoints and perspectives, to manage complexity, and to manage what they are doing as independent units, speaking through interfaces. And I think that all businesses will need to get to this state if we are to deliver on the promise of integration. Now, what does this have to do with creative technologists, with you? Look at that list once again. We're talking about clients really having problems with integrated solutions, with a holistic approach to communications, with their digital marketing capabilities. Story systems, integration, DevOps, and decoupling. Worlds which you understand, you just bring it from your perspective with experienced technology. You have the power to actually fix this, to evangelize that this needs to happen, that two-speed ID doesn't make sense, that you got to get the whole story system working in an agile manner. But don't just do it because of this. Kondratyev, a Russian economist, long gone, but in 1925, he published a theory that talked about economic waves and technological disruption. And his theory was that each wave has a period of massive build-out and then a period of disruption, and during that period of disruption, another wave of technology emerges. I think there's no arguing that we are in a period of massive disruption right now. The last 10 years, possibly the next 10 years, are going to feel as disruptive as they do today. The question is, if you subscribe to his theory, what's the next wave? There's probably we're in the beginning of a sixth wave of innovation, but we don't quite see it yet. But you do. Because I think it's about this. You can already see the writing on the wall, the amount of buzz around the internet of everything. The digitization of everything, from liquids to paint to every object in this room potentially being digitized. What will happen in that state? I don't know, but I think that you have the DNA to figure that out. I think that you have it in you. So that's my case. Questions?
Any questions for Sheldon?
Hi. It isn't often that happens, so thank you. It's a great question, right? I think part of it really comes down to our role as agencies. I think we've got to redefine our position in the C-suite. The CMO is not the only stakeholder. It's really the CEO who's the stakeholder. So you got to push from that direction as well. But frankly, there's a lot that can be done from the grassroots. And the reason why I wanted to talk with you about this today is because I think that we are happy to stay in our small groups. When I showed that Tower of Babel thing, I think that the classic response from an agency side is, all right, let's make this into small teams and let's go off and build this one experience, right? And the problem with that is that it doesn't scale because it doesn't affect the rest of the storyscape, right? So I think that we have to push that dialogue in every conversation because we've got to change hearts and minds, one mind at a time. And most of our customers are ready for this change. And we see it, all over the place there, and they're telling us that as Avi, kind of surveyed in his survey results. That helps. Other thoughts?
I'm wondering, how do you represent that you are a credible partner in tasks? How do you start with any
So another great question. First off, it helps. Our DNA helps. So I'll be open about that. The fact that we came out of SapientNitro initially came out of a technology culture where we were really building large-scale business systems. That certainly helps with the fact that we've got tremendous credibility on enterprise transformation and enterprise systems. But today, frankly, having the conversation we just had, this is not a complex dialogue, right? It's having this conversation even with a CMO. CMO will get it. The question is, and the CMO is probably struggling with, how can I get my whole organization to be agile? And mind you, this is not an IT marketing thing. There are marketing departments that want to, deliver in an episodic manner versus a continuous manner, right? But most senior executives tend to get it. Then the question becomes, can you actually deliver on that proposition at scale? In my experience. One last question, and then we'll wrap, if there are any. Yes. Yes. Sure. Yeah, so the CMTO University, the Chief Marketing Technology Officer, really recognizes that there's this new set of talent that's required in the C-suite, and it sits at the intersection of marketing, technology, business, and influence. Those four vectors, if you will. So what we've done is we've put together a curriculum that we've started with technology people, but you don't need to. You could start with marketers as well. I do believe you need to start with one type or the other because the kind of learning that you need is tailored to the needs of a cohort. So we've got a cohort-based model where over the course of a year, we teach a whole bunch of skills, including the landscape of marketing technology. There are probably about 31 different topics that we cover on the marketing technology side. We teach the fundamentals of marketing. We teach the fundamentals of business. Now, all of these are skills, right? Skills that you can read, you can kind of absorb in more of a kind of a skills-oriented manner. But the biggest thing that we do is we work on influence skills and risk-taking. Because part of what we need to be able to do is to work with senior executives in a bold manner. So to be able to take somebody who typically is used to speaking to a CIO or a CTO and enable that individual to feel completely empowered in front of a CEO or a CMO, to speak with confidence, to be bold, propose ideas. Those are the kinds of things that we work on. And that's more experiential. It's everything from the way in which we present, the way in which we think about risk, the way in which we think about our role in the universe. What's our given the age in which we sit, and this was the reason for that last slide over there. I think we are in a really unique age. And this is not going to last forever, right? We are in one of these waves where this disruption is kind of tailored to what we do. So we've got to be bold and take that opportunity. And, that's part of what we teach in the university. I have some slides on SlideShare that go into a little more detail on what we do if you're interested. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheldon.